You work decades for stability, but that very stability may be the reason you feel bored, flat, or stuck. It's a feeling so many people experience, but very few really understand why. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the hidden psychology of this feeling and figure out why a life you work so hard for can sometimes feel surprisingly hollow. Let's get into it. This quote right here, "This is the heart of the whole matter." It's the central paradox we're going to explore. You see, the very thing you were aiming for, a life of predictability, of routine, of stability, can, over time, start to feel less like a reward and more like a cage. And that's a really profound psychological shift. Understanding it is the absolute first step toward getting that spark back. So, here's our plan. First, we're going to unpack that stability paradox. Then, we'll dive into something called the identity vacuum. After that, we'll find an engine for vitality, the real solution. From there, it's all about action, building your disruption plan, understanding the wisdom of discomfort, and finally, figuring out your very first step.
All right, let's start with the big one, the stability paradox. This is all about that strange moment when you look around and realize you've achieved what you set out to do. You have a stable, predictable life, but it just feels, well, flat. It's an incredibly common experience, but we just don't talk about it enough.
So, what's going on here? Why does this life of routine, something that probably felt like the ultimate goal for decades, suddenly feel so restrictive? It's a really confusing feeling because on paper, everything's great. You have the time, you have the freedom, you have the security. But deep down, something just feels missing. The answer isn't that you're ungrateful, it's that your psychological needs have just fundamentally changed.
And that feeling? It leads us directly to the root cause, which is something we call the identity vacuum. To really get a handle on this, we need to look at what really changed when your professional career came to an end. Because it was about so much more than just a paycheck.
For most of our adult lives, our work gives us what psychologists call a script. I mean, think about it. It gave our days a built-in structure, it gave us clear goals to hit and milestones to celebrate, it gave us regular validation from our bosses and our colleagues. It was a huge part of our identity. And when that entire script just disappears, it can leave behind a pretty significant psychological void. Without that framework, it's really easy to feel a little bit lost. And when you see it laid out like this, side by side, it just clicks, doesn't it? On the left, you've got the work script. It was dynamic, right? Full of structure, goals, that regular validation, and a clear sense of who you were professionally. But on the right, well, if we're not careful, the retirement script can become the exact opposite. It can get bogged down in overly rigid routines and a real lack of newness. Without those external goals, our days can start to feel kind of aimless. And that identity void, that's the real heart of the problem. You can see exactly what got lost in the transition.
So this feeling that we've been describing, it actually has a name. It's called stagnation. And it's a state of emotional flatness that's caused by two things: a lack of new, meaningful challenges and the urgent need to redefine who you are now. And here's the most important part. This is not a personal failing. It is a recognized psychological state that comes with a major life change. Just giving it a name takes away some of its power, It stops being this vague, personal worry and becomes a common, understandable challenge that we can actually do something about.
Okay, so if stagnation is the problem, what in the world is the solution? Well, that brings us to our next section, which is all about finding your engine for vitality. And the answer, believe it or not, might be a lot simpler and more powerful than you think. It really all comes down to the power of novelty.
I want you to let this one really sink in. The single most powerful lesson we can take away from all the research on this is this: novelty is the engine of emotional vitality. Introducing new experiences, new learning, new challenges, that's the fuel. That feeling of being stuck, it's actually a signal. It's your brain telling you, hey, things have gotten a little too comfortable in here. It's time to shake things up. It's not a sign that life is over. It's a sign that a new, more interesting chapter needs to begin.
So the goal then is to build what we can call a dynamic identity. And this has nothing to do with who you were, your old job title, your past achievements. That's all in the rearview mirror. This is about who you are now and who you are in the process of becoming. It's a new sense of self that's rooted in things you're actively doing today, in your growth, in your contributions to others, and in developing totally new skills. It's an identity that's alive, that's evolving.
So how do we actually build this thing? Well, it really comes down to two main paths you can take. First, there are contribution missions. These are things you do that provide value and make you feel relevant to other people. Maybe volunteering for a cause you believe in, mentoring a younger person, or using your skills to help out a local charity. Then there are mastery missions. These are all about your own personal growth, finally learning that language, picking up the guitar, taking a deep dive into a historical subject you love, or mastering a craft like woodworking. And you know what? There's real science to back this up. This chart shows it pretty clearly. When we're just going through the motions with routine tasks, our brain's dopamine response, that's the chemical that makes us feel motivated and rewarded, it's pretty low. But when we take on new challenges, our brain gets a hit of dopamine. Pursuing something new literally fuels our motivation. It's what makes us feel engaged and alive. It's your brain's own built-in reward system for growth. And the cool part is, we can learn to turn it on whenever we want. Okay, we've covered the what and the why. Now let's get really practical and talk about the how. This section is all about creating your very own disruption plan. It's a way to apply all these ideas safely without feeling like you have to turn your entire life upside down.
We can break this down into a simple 3-step plan. Step 1, do a gentle novelty audit. This isn't about being critical, it's just about being aware. Look at your week and just notice the routines that have become a little too comfortable, the stuff you do on autopilot. Step 2 is to apply something called the rule of 3. We'll talk more about that in a second. And step 3 is to practice some low-stakes risk, especially socially, by starting with small, easy interactions that just gently push your comfort zone.
Okay, so this rule of 3 is a fantastic way to make this manageable. The goal is to sprinkle a little novelty into 3 key areas of your life. For mental novelty, maybe you learn a new card game or read a book on a topic you know nothing about. For physical novelty, it could be as simple as taking a different route on your daily walk or trying a beginner's yoga class on YouTube. And for social novelty, it could be joining a book club or even just making a point to strike up a conversation with the barista at a new coffee shop you've been wanting to try.
Now, as you start to introduce these little disruptions, you might feel a bit, well, awkward. And that's not just okay, it's actually a fantastic sign. Which brings us to a really important mindset shift, understanding the wisdom that's hidden inside that discomfort.
That initial feeling of awkwardness, that little bit of challenge, it has a name. It's called psychological friction. It's the sensation you get when your brain is working hard, learning something new, and literally building new connections. So it is crucial to reframe that feeling. It is not a stop sign. It is the very sensation of growth happening in real time. When you feel it, you should congratulate yourself. It means you're on the right track.
And this quote just nails it, doesn't it? Comfort is the subtle enemy of fulfillment. Our brains are wired to love what's comfortable and predictable, but true vitality, that real sense of fulfillment, that almost always lives just a little bit outside our comfort zone. Choosing to step out of it, even in these small ways, is how we keep our minds sharp and our later years truly dynamic.
All right, we have covered a ton of ground here, from understanding the problem to building a plan and shifting our mindset. Now let's bring it all home and boil it down to one single takeaway and a very clear, very gentle challenge for you.
If you remember just one thing today, please let it be this. The antidote to stagnation isn't more rest or more routine, it's deliberate, intentional disruption. Feeling stuck is just the hidden cost of too much stability. And a dynamic identity built on novelty and challenge, that's the cure. And so that leads to my final question for you. Don't think about overhauling your whole life. Just think about one small thing. What is one routine, one habit that you do on complete autopilot that you could safely and intentionally disrupt this week? Maybe it's trying a new recipe. Maybe it's listening to a totally different kind of music. The size of the action doesn't matter at all. The intention behind it, that is everything. So let's bring this all to a close. Remember, that feeling of being stuck isn't a destination. It's just a signal from your brain that is hungry for novelty. The most helpful thing you can do is replace that old static identity with a new mission. Whether that's a mission of contribution to others or one of mastery for yourself. By embracing just a little bit of complexity, you're actively choosing a life defined not by your past, but by curiosity, by growth, and by a sustained emotional vitality that can make these years some of the very best of all.